President Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday Russia will only accept payments in rubles for gas deliveries to unfriendly countries, which include all EU members after Moscow was hit by unprecedented sanctions over Ukraine.
Obvious that in this context, it does not make any sense for us to supply our goods to both the European Union and the United States, and to receive payments in dollars, euros, or other currencies. So we have decided to implement a set of measures of transfer payments in a very short time. We will start by transferring payments for our natural gas supplies to the so-called unfriendly countries to Russian rubles. This means abandoning the use of all compromised currencies in these payments. At the same time, I would like to stress separately that Russia will continue to unconditionally supply natural gas in accordance with the volumes and pricing principles set out in the contracts concluded earlier.
I want to say, all praise Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, a great millstone, who rule well, and all the Akim laboring in the work, pushing out this truth. Shalom to the hopeful elect. We hasten for the return of Hamashiach, Yahushai, and the establishment of righteousness on earth and the destruction of this wicked kingdom. So things are about to get very, very interesting. So now Russia is requiring these countries that are in NATO, specifically the ones that have agreed with the sanctions against Russia. He is now implementing legislation or laws requiring them to pay for their natural resources, mainly being natural gas, and the Russian ruble. So that's going to have some effect around the world, and I actually want to see how this is going to play out. You know, right offhand, it's going to decrease the dollar, because that's the United States, America, which is Babylon the Great. They've been able to have a stranglehold over the world, mainly through two reasons. Mainly first by one reason, their military might. Make no mistake, America, Babylon the Great is a very, very formidable military. And what they have done is use their military to influence these other nations, whether it's by offering them security against other nations, or downright disrupting the governments of certain nations who don't want to go along, and then implementing, you know, these puppet leaders. But now we're about to see what's really finna happen with these sanctions. We already kind of anticipated, you know, that there was going to be some backlash from these sanctions that America and these NATO countries placed on Russia. We already knew that Russia was a big exporter of not just natural resources such as natural gas and oil, but also of resources that contribute to the world economy. You know, one of them being wheat, you know, grain, and fertilizer. So things are really getting turned up. But when I saw that video, or that little short clip, the first thing that popped in my mind was Obadiah. So we're going to read Obadiah. I'm in Jeremiah right now, but we're going to go to Obadiah chapter 7, Salakia, Obadiah chapter 1. We're going to start at verse 7. I'm going to read this, and then we're going to get a little history on NATO, because it's going to make sense when you read this. Alright, so I didn't talk enough, I didn't ramble enough. Let's get into the scriptures. So this is Obadiah chapter 1 verse 7, and it reads, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. So who are the men that are confederate? This is talking about Esau, Edom as a whole, but it's mainly dealing with America, Babylon the Great. All the men of their confederacy are who? All their allies. You know, it's not just these European nations, it's all these nations that are allied with America. But this right here is going to point out how detailed, just how bad the Most High is with his scriptures. You know, this is really going into, you know, NATO in Europe, because those EU nations, they're the ones that are going to turn on America Babylon the Great, because that's who America Babylon the Great has the closest ties to. They're supposed to be in this thing together, especially with creating this new world order. Other countries that are allied with America, they're pretty much backing America by force. You know, there's some manipulation going on behind the closed doors that we don't know about. But this is different. These Edomite nations, these European nations, they're supposed to be with America. So this is who this is dealing with mainly. But let's read this again from the top. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. The him is Esau, Edom, mainly dealing with Babylon the Great. But the men of his confederacy are these European nations. Other nations as well, but specifically dealing with these European nations. And it says, they that eat thy bread. What is it talking about? It's talking about military aid, economic aid, whatever type of aid that America provides for other nations, you know, to guarantee their security as far as dealing with other nations or their economy. That's what that's talking about. So it's all the aid that America, you know, provides to these other countries, but mainly these European countries. So with that, let's go get a little history, because it'll make a whole lot more sense. So let's read this again from the top, and then we're going to go get a little history on NATO. So this is Obadiah chapter 1 verse 7 again. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. So let's get a little history. So this is from historystate.gov, and it's dealing with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is NATO, which was officially formed or created in 1949. So we'll read this little first header here, and then we're going to read the last two paragraphs. So the North Atlantic Treaty Organization was created in 1949 by the United States, Canada, and several Western European nations to provide collective security against the Soviet Union. So initially, the whole idea of NATO was to be a deterrent against the Soviet Union. This is following World War II. All right, so let's jump down, and we're going to start with the Brussels Treaty. So this is signing of the Brussels Treaty. The Western European countries were willing to consider a collective security solution. In response to increasing tensions and security concerns, representatives of several countries of Western Europe gathered together to create a military alliance. Great Britain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg signed the Brussels Treaty in March 1948. So the Brussels Treaty is what eventually led to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was these original countries at first. All right, so where we at? All right, their treaty provided collective defense if any one of these nations were attacked. The others were bound to help defend it. At the same time, the Truman administration instituted a peacetime draft, increased military spending, and called upon the historically isolationists, Republican Congress to consider a military alliance with Europe. So what's being described when it says isolationist Republican Congress? Before the Truman administration and during the Truman administration, up until the signing of NATO, America had this philosophy, idea, or doctrine that they would not get involved in international affairs unless it directly involved the United States, unless it directly involved America. So they were against, being a part of any type of signing of treaty or agreement that would, have them held accountable for helping out other countries directly if it did not directly affect the United States. But there was a growing, growing sense in the government that America had this opportunity to push itself onto the world stage. So that's what that's describing right there. All right, so let's read that again. The treaty provided collective defense. If any one of these nations was attacked, the others were bound to help defend it. At the same time, the Truman administration instituted a peacetime draft, increased military spending, and called upon the historically isolationist Republican Congress to consider a military alliance with Europe. In May of 1948, Republican Senator Arthur H. Vandenberg proposed a resolution suggesting that the president seek a security treaty with Western Europe that would adhere to the United Nations Charter but exist outside the Security Council where the Soviet Union held veto power. The Vandenberg resolution passed and negotiations began for the North Atlantic Treaty. So that was the beginning of forming the treaty, the documents that would solidify the NATO nations. All right. In spite of general agreement upon the concept behind the treaty, it took several months to work out the exact terms. The U.S. Congress had embraced the pursuit of the international alliance, but it remained concerned about the wording of the treaty. The nations of Western Europe wanted assurance that the United States would intervene automatically in the event of an attack, but under the U.S. Constitution, the power to declare war rested with Congress. So one of the main concerns of these countries in signing this treaty was, we want to guarantee that America is going to help us out no matter what happens. Now, only Congress has the power to officially come out and declare war against a nation. But if you know anything about America, Babylon the Great, we've been in military conflict almost the whole time that America has been a nation. What the president has is a power called authorization for military use. Salaki is authorization for use of military force, which is the acronym is AMF. So that's what the president typically authorizes in lieu of having to go to Congress and have them officially declare war, because that can take some time. So what these other countries were saying, we don't need Congress deliberating for weeks on end on whether or not to go to war when we need help. We need America to assure us that they're going to help. So I just want that the part about the authorization for use of military force, that's just some little FYI as how America enters into these conflicts now without officially declaring war through Congress. Anyway, negotiations work toward finding language that would reassure the European states but not obligate the United States to act in a way that violated its own laws. Additionally, European contributions to collective security would require large-scale military assistance from the United States to help rebuild Western Europe's defense capabilities. So what you have to understand, after World War II, actually after World War I, going into World War II, definitely after World War II, the infrastructure of these Western European nations, it was destroyed. The infrastructure, the military was weak. They were still functioning, but not to full capacity where they could defend themselves. So that's why they had to band together. And even with them banding together, that would not be enough to, repel a military force like Russia. So they needed America. And what America used was the opportunity to catapult himself as the superpower. And that's what actually ended up happening. So let's read this again. Negotiations worked toward finding language that would reassure the European states but not obligate the United States to act in a way that violated its own laws. Additionally, European contributions to collective security would require large-scale military assistance from the United States to help rebuild Western Europe's defense capabilities. While the European nations argued for individual grants and aid, the United States wanted to make aid conditional on regional coordination. What does that mean? That means that aid is going to be divvied up according to who's going to allow America to do what, such as put military bases here, demand that this happen or that happen. It also goes into different trades, or it backing America up on this. Let's use an example. What happened with 9/11? Everybody know that was a setup. America was planning on going into Iraq one way or another, but you had a lot of countries that voted against that, but not these European nations. They voted for it. That's why when George Bush was giving his speeches about it, he kept mentioning we have a coalition of nations that back us. We. So basically, these nations would be bound to back in America. But that regional coordination is the main point. With America giving aid to these countries, that financial aid, that economic aid, America was able to dictate the terms of the agreement because they had the power and they had the money. All right. While the European nations argued for individual grants and aid, the United States wanted to make aid conditional on regional coordination. A third issue was the question of scope. The Brussels Treaty signatories, these are the original people who signed the Brussels Agreement. The Brussels Treaty signatories preferred that membership in the alliance be restricted to the members of that treaty plus the United States. So the original signers of the Brussels Treaty, or signatories, since they use that word, they just wanted those nations to be a part of it, including the United States. But let's keep reading. The U.S. negotiators felt there was more to be gained from enlarging the new treaty to include the countries of the North Atlantic, including Canada, Iceland, Denmark, Norway, and Portugal. Together, these countries held territory that formed a bridge between the opposite shores of the Atlantic and would facilitate military action if it became necessary. So, because the United States, America, Babylon the Great had the power, they were able to dictate the terms and the conditions. These originally, the signatories of the Brussels Agreement, they just wanted those original countries to be a part of it. But America was seeing in the foresight. They had foresight to say, you know what, it might be advantageous to us to eventually allow other members in. And there's nothing wrong with that. Any nation in the power seat would do that. And what you got to understand, there's no such thing as far as these world nations are concerned, there's no good guys and bad guys. It's all about who got the power. If you got the power as a nation, then you're gonna make things go your way. If you got that power, because you're trying to secure your own future. You're trying to secure your own place in the world. And if you got that number one spot, you're not going to let it go. So in that sense, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just that the people are wicked. The Edomites are just wicked. That's what the Most High created them to be. Job 9:20, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. That's who they are. All right, so let's read this second one. But then we're going to go get some scriptures. And I'm going to close it out on that. So, President Truman, this is just an insert of President Truman inspecting tanks. Alright, the result of these extensive negotiations was the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty in 1949. In this agreement, the United States Canada, Belgium, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, and the United Kingdom agreed to consider attack against one an attack against all, along with consultations about threats and defense matters. This collective defense arrangement only formally applied to attacks against the signatories that occurred in Europe and North America. It did not include conflicts in colonial territories. And basically what that's saying is just dealing with those European nations and not the nations that they colonized outside of their countries, you know, like different places in India, South Africa, and other places in Africa, the Caribbeans. It was only dealing with those, you know, those main European nations. All right, where we at? After the treaty was signed, a number of the signatories made requests to the United States for military aid. Later in 1949, President Truman proposed a military assistance program, and the Mutual Defense Assistance Program passed. President Truman proposed a military assistance program, and the Mutual Defense Assistance Program passed the U.S. Congress in October, appropriating some $1.4 billion for the purpose of building Western European defenses. Soon after the creation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the outbreak of the Korean War led the members to move quickly to integrate and coordinate their defense forces through a centralized headquarters. The North Korean attack on South Korea was widely viewed at the time to be an example of communist aggression directed by Moscow. And there's a little history on that. I'm not going to get into that though. So the United States bolstered its troop commitments to Europe to provide assurance against Soviet aggression on the European continent. In 1952, the members agreed to admit Greece and Turkey to NATO and added the Federation Republic of Germany in 1955, because remember, Germany was still split. The western side was, I think, under the control of France, Great Britain, and I can't think of the other one. It was 3 countries. It might have been America. I know it was France and Great Britain. And then the western side, of course, was controlled by the Soviet Union. West Germany entry led the Soviet Union to retaliate with its own regional alliance, which took the form of the Warsaw Treaty Organization and included the Soviet satellite states of Eastern Europe as members. Listen to this. The collective defense agreements in NATO served to place the whole of Western Europe under the American nuclear umbrella. In the 1950s, one of the first military doctrines of NATO emerged in the form of massive retaliation, or the idea that if any member was attacked, the United States would respond with a large-scale nuclear attack. The threat of this form of response was meant to serve as a deterrent against Soviet aggression on the continent. Although formed in response to the exigencies of the developing Cold War, NATO has lasted beyond the end of that conflict, with membership even expanding to include some former Soviet states. It remains the largest peacetime military alliance in the world. So the main things I really wanted to get out of that article was, first give you a little history on, how NATO was formed and how America played a role in that. But you can see that they that eat thy bread, it was these European nations, and these same European nations are going to turn on America, Babylon the Great. That's what Obadiah chapter 1 verse 7 is talking about. And then we're going to go read Revelations chapter 17, and it's going to really highlight that. But I want to get a little history first. So let's go back to Obadiah chapter 1 verse 7. Let's read this verse again, and then let's go to Revelations. This is Obadiah chapter 1 verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy, all those European nations. Now when this thing kick off, when World War III kick off, now let me say this. World War III is not going to happen next week or next month. You have some prophecies that have to take place. First and foremost, the biggest prophecy is the implementation of the Charagma. So the mark of the beast is going to be pushed out to the world. That has to happen. Also, Jacob's trouble. You're going to have to go through a time like never before on the earth. So those things have to happen. Then there's going to be World War III. That's not to say that World War III can't kick off, between Russia and NATO and America, and then progressively escalates into a more, drastic situation where it comes into, mad or mutually assured destruction. Yeah, that can happen. And that's what we're actually seeing. We're seeing the beginnings of that. We're seeing the preparations for World War III. But when we speak of World War III, we're speaking in a term that the Most High spoke about the term as the Valley of Jehoshaphat, where all the nations are going to be gathered in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, or Yahweh Shaphat, the Valley of the Most High's judgment, the Valley of Yahweh's judgment. Armageddon or Armageddon. That's the World War III we're speaking about. So this is just one part of it. Now these are the two major pieces. These are the two major players: America, Babylon the Great, and Gog and Magog, which is Russia, and they're all Edomites. But anyway, I keep getting sidetracked. Anyway, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. These nations are going to turn on America, Babylon the Great, and prevailed against thee. So they're going to destroy this place. They're going to be destroyed too, but they're going to destroy America. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. Those are the nations that ate the bread of America, Babylon the Great. And what you're starting to see is these nations, those European nations, they rely on Russia. So what's going to happen? Russia is going to make them purchase rubles in order to, get those natural resources. So these European nations, they're going to have to. They're not going to have a choice. It's not a matter of, they can just switch from importing natural gas and start getting coal or liquid oil, shipped over there. You have to change your whole infrastructure, to change from one resource to another on that scale, to be able to supply those nations the way they need to be supplied. Because it's people, it's having lights, it's having heat, it's having energy, it's businesses, it's their militaries, all these things are impacted. So America, really what America has is muscle, and it has this trade. It's just a international trading post. It's not really providing any resources to the world. It's not to say that America doesn't ship any resources out, because they do, but not on a sense where the world is relying on America for that. No, it's just that America, all this trade is happening here. The money is exchanged here because the dollar is the world currency. And how did it become the world currency? America provided military aid or protection to Saudi Arabia, which made the dollar the petrodollar. So anyone purchasing oil will have to purchase oil in dollars. So Russia is saying, hey, if you want my natural resources, you gotta buy them. You gotta buy rubles. So you gotta change your dollars that you have and buy my rubles, and then you can purchase my natural resources. Not to mention that Saudi Arabia is now considering selling oil to China in wons, their currency. So that's further bringing down the dollar. So what is America going to do? They're not going to just sit back and let their position be taken away. This war is going to happen. Now, is it going to happen next week? Is it going to happen next month? No, but famine is coming. You know, the spirit has been heavy on brothers to bring out, things regarding famine. This shit finna get real. This shit finna get real quick. And, you need to have faith. I just did a lesson on the famine that's coming, mainly dealing with Russia and their they're exporting of fertilizers, and these farmers not having enough fertilizer to, farm at full capacity. So they're just farming with just segments of their acres, of their land. So the production of food is going to be low. So it's going to be a scarcity. And then the people are going to be hoarding. It's just going to get crazy, man. But anyway, this lesson is dealing with they that eat thy bread. So these nations that are in league with America, Babylon the Great, the ones that are confederate with Babylon the Great, they're going to turn on her. So let's go to Revelation chapter 17. This is Revelation chapter 17. And we're going to start at verse 9. And it starts out, verse 9 starts out well. Let me just say it like that. Here is the mind which hath wisdom. This is not talking about Rome, like the Roman Catholic Church, because a lot of people think these 7 heads, because they talk about 7 hills. It's going to explain to you. Here is the mind which hath wisdom. If you got some wisdom, you should be able to understand this. Again, here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Now you can go back up and read, just for the sake of staying on track. I'm not going to do that. But that woman is America, Babylon the Great. These mountains, they represent kingdoms, governments. That's what these mountains represent. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Because John saw a woman, a beautiful woman, sitting on a beast with 7 heads. That woman was America, Babylon the Great. And the angel is explaining to him what those 7 heads represented, what the beast was. Verse 10. And there are 7 kings, 7 mountains, 7 kings. These represent kingdoms. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is yet not, Salakia, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. What are the 5 kings? The five that are falling were the Greeks, the French, the Spanish, Germana Minor, and Germana Major. How? You got to understand. Well, let me continue. 5 are fallen, and 1 is. The one that is, because this is during John's time, the one that is the Roman Empire, because that's the nation or the kingdom that's in power during the time that John the Revelator was alive. Right now he's on the island of Patmos. He was exiled to the island of Patmos basically as a political prisoner working on the salt mounds. So check this out. It says, and there are 7 kings. So these kings represent kingdoms. 5 are fallen and 1 is. So the one that is, we know, is the Roman Empire. So that should show you what these mountains represent. They represent kingdoms. They represent governments, nations. So the one that is was the Roman Empire. They had conquered that region. That region consisted of, it was the Greeks, the French. Now they weren't going by these names. They had ancient names like the Gauls, the Franks. It's other names. I can't think of them right now. But those are the names. But those groups of people, which were all Edomites, they eventually became what's known as what you would call your French, your Spanish, your Germans. That's what those nations are. So it was Greek, Spanish, the French, Germana Minor, and Germana Major. And you can go look up Germana Minor and Germana Major. A lot of people don't understand that those Germanic tribes, they were split. They wasn't just one. And you had Germana Major and you had Germana Minor. I did a lesson on it a while back, but you can just look into that. But that's what those that's what those five that are fallen are going into, because at this time the Roman Empire was in control, and they had conquered all of those lands, and the other is not yet come. What is that talking about? That's talking about Great Britain. They had not come yet. They were in the future, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Verse 11. Listen. And the beast that was, the one that was the Roman Empire, and is not. How is he not? Because the Roman Empire fell. It fell after John's time. It fell in what, 476 AD. It fell after his time, but the angel is explaining it to him. The beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth. Check this. So the beast that was obviously who? The Roman Empire. And was not was obviously who? It's talking about the same one. It is the Roman Empire after they fell. Even he is the eighth. How is he the eighth? I'm going to show you a picture. Not here. So you got these. You got the woman, which is America, on Babylon the Great. You got 7 heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The woman's head is the 8th. She is the reborn Roman Empire. America is Rome reborn. This whole system, this whole beast system, is coming after the power of the dragon. The dragon was the Roman Empire, was the pagan Roman Empire. This whole system is after the Roman Empire. America is the rebirth of Rome. It's Rome all over again. I'm going to come back to this picture, but I don't want to lose my point. So verse 11, and the beast that was, which is the Roman Empire, and is not, because it fell. That's that seal that was placed on the dragon, Satan, the devil, which is the Edomites, for 1,000 years. Even he is the 8th and is of the 7. How is he of the 7? Because America, as far as what you know it today, it wasn't here. It came out of it came out of those Europeans, those European nations. Think, those European nations, mainly the United Kingdom of Britain, France, and the Spaniards. That's why you had the American Revolution, the French-American War, the Spanish-American War. But those people who were claiming to be Americans, they came from Europe. They were part of those nations. Listen, and the beast that was the Roman Empire and is not the Roman Empire, even he is the 8th, the woman on the beast, and is of the 7, because America came from those European nations, and goeth into perdition. Perdition means destruction, because that is the end game for America. The Most High raised America up to be this great superpower, just so he can show his might in destroying this place, and his great mercy by delivering his elect, the children of Israel, out of this place before the destruction. That's the whole purpose of America. To punish us, to send us into captivity, our last captivity, punish us, raise America up to be so great so the Most High can show his power and deliver us out of this place when it's destroyed. Verse 13, these have one mind. That's your one world order, your new world order, Salakia. This is why video clips and I plan on doing a video on that. I'm going to do it tomorrow. This is why you got these video clips surfacing of Biden talking about New World Order, and it's being linked with George Bush saying the same thing about the New World Order. And it's plenty other clips, but those were the main ones going on, between yesterday and today. And these have one mind. See, they have one mind. They're in league with America right now. And shall give their power and strength unto the beast. The beast is this system. So they're giving all their resources to this system. They're giving all their military to this system. They're aligning their legislations and policies and agendas to this system. So these European nations, they're going along with America, Babylon the Great, even though it's not to their benefit. They're going to suffer with these sanctions that Putin and Russia is putting on other countries, now requiring that any resources that are bought from them have to be paid for in rubles. It's going to hurt them more. It's going to hurt America too. You know, the things that are coming to America are going to be far worse than the things that are going to be happening in those countries. It's prophesied that these things will happen here. Jacob's trouble is going to be hell. It's going to be like a time like no other since there was a nation. Daniel's 12. Anyway, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Now, why did they give their power and strength to the beast? Going all the way back to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Going all the way back to the Brussels Treaty. America was providing those European nations with military security, military aid, financial aid to help them build themselves up. But in doing so, America was able to decide the terms and the conditions of the agreement, of the treaty, and to best benefit America. And these nations go along as America goes because America got the power, because the Most High put America in that position. But the Most High is slowly bringing this man down, and he's going to use Russia, mainly Russia, along with the allies of America, which are going to turn on her, and these other nations, because the whole world is sick of America. They're getting tired of this place because they wicked, they lie, they backstab, they cheat, they kill, they rape, they manipulate, they pollute the minds. That's all they do. And these other countries are getting sick of it. Now they not any better. I mean, if they were in that power seat, they'd be doing the same thing. But it just so happens that America's in that power seat. Alright, I keep rambling, but anyway, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So these nations, they're all in league with each other. That one mind again is going into your new world order. Verse 14, these shall make war with the Lamb. See, this is what people don't understand. It's these European nations that are going to go to war with Yahushua. Who's the Lamb? The Lamb is Yahushua. So when Yahushua and the angels come back, it's going to be mainly these European nations. It's going to be other nations too, because what's going to happen, you're going to have World War III. We're going to have to be delivered out of here somehow. How we going to get delivered out of mutually assured destruction? Yahushua and the angels are coming back in those chariots. As they come back to deliver the elect, these nations are going to turn their attention and start trying to fight the Lamb. Verse 14 at the top. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. See, the whore, she's over all the nations, all the waters, all the seas, all the peoples. She's over everything. Verse 16, and the 10 horns, because there were 10 horns on these 7 heads, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Now let me say this, because I'm not sure if I made this point. We're going to go back to that picture. These 7 heads represent the 7 Edomite powers throughout history. The 7 major Edomite kingdoms. That being the Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish, the French, Germania Minor, Germania Major, and Great Britain. That's what those 7 heads represent. Now they all had 10 horns. Well, not every single one of them had 10 horns, but there were 10 horns on the beast itself. Those 10 horns represent those original countries of NATO. That's what they represent. Let's go look at this picture again. Now, if you look where it says 666 and you look below that, you'll see a list of 10 nations. So let's read them. Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Greece. 8 says Spain and Portugal. 9 says England and Ireland. And 10 says West Germany. Now, when you look up the original members of NATO, it's going to list 12 countries. So, and it's going to have Portugal and Ireland separate. But when you look on the map and when you do the history, you will see that those nations were one nation and they had one king at one point. It's just that they are split up. So you got to understand, well, first and foremost, these are all Edomite nations. But that's what those 10 horns are going into. Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Greece, Spain, and Portugal, England and Ireland, and West Germany. So those are the original signers of, you know what? In fact, it's no different. So say West Germany, I'm just going to make a quick point. Say West Germany, which is listed on here, had signed, and then say the next year East Germany, which was still under Soviet control, say they signed, it would be listed the same way. You'd have 13 nations. But what you see today is one Germany. That's the same concept of Spain and Portugal and England and Ireland. So those are those 10 horns. So let's go back. Verse 13. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Verse 15. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. So these nations are going to turn on the whore, which is America, Babylon the Great. So something's going to happen. And what you're seeing now with the move that Putin made is the beginning of that something starting to happen. Because what are those nations going to do? What is America going to do? Is America going to say, Putin or Russia, you better start giving them oil, or you better start giving them natural gas? What are these countries what are they going to do? And that's why Obadiah jumped out immediately to me when I seen that little clip. What are these countries going to do? So something's going to escalate up to a point where these nations are going to turn on America. So let's read 16 again on down. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Why? Who's in control of all of this? Verse 17. For the Most High hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. So the Most High is making them do that. The Most High works on the minds of the kings. The Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men. The Most High is making all these things happen to bring forth his word. That's what it's all about, the word of the Most High. Verse 18, then we're going to go to Jeremiah, and I'm going to close out with Jeremiah. Verse 18, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. America reigns over the king of the earth. America is the hammer of the earth. So let's go to Jeremiah 50. I'm going to close out here. This is Jeremiah chapter 50. We're going to start at verse 8. It says, remove out of the midst of Babylon, and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, and be as the he goats before the flocks. Now, it's not talking about move physically. This is a spiritual moving out of Babylon. And this is talking about Babylon the Great. It's not talking about ancient Babylon. A lot of these prophecies are twofold. When you read the, especially the books of Jeremiah and Isaiah, sometimes it's speaking about ancient Babylon, but it's for the future Babylon. Because we know that what the Most High said about ancient Babylon that was going to happen to it, as far as its destruction, which we're going to read, didn't happen. It was meant for this Babylon, Babylon the Great. Verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon, an assembly of great nations from the north country. What's the north country? That's dealing with Gog and Magog, which is Russia, but there's going to be an assembly of nations. It's not going to just be Russia. And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence shall she be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert. None shall return in vain. Those arrows aren't talking about literal arrows. They're parables. You know, these scriptures are written in dark sayings and parables. These are talking about these ICBMs, these intercontinental ballistic missiles. This is how you know it's talking about this Babylon. Verse 10. And Chaldea shall be a spoil, and all that spoil her shall be satisfied, saith Yahweh, because ye were glad, because ye rejoice, O ye destroyers of mine heritage. Who is that? That's you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, keeping you from knowing who you are, keeping your mind polluted with wickedness, telling you ain't the children of the Most High. Those fake ass 1948ers, they're the people. And they wicked as hell. No, you are. They destroyed you. Now the Most High allowed them to destroy you because it was your punishment. But you all know this. You all know how the scriptures go. He that toucheth Israel toucheth the apple of the Most High's eye. And I'm just paraphrasing. Because ye were glad, because ye rejoice, O ye destroyers of mine heritage, because ye are grown fat as the heifer at grass, and bellow as bulls, because America was allowed to become this great nation, great in power, great in splendor. People were amazed about America. That's why you had all these nations wanting to come over here. Now that's been slowly declining. Even now though, to this day, you still got people from other nations. It's their dream to try to come over here. Verse 12, your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Who is the mother of Babylon the Great? This is going into Great Britain. See, as we read in Revelation chapter 17, America came out of those 7 horns. He is the 8th and of the 7. But specifically, the 3 specifically were Great Britain, Great Britain, France, and Spain. But specifically, it was UK, Great Britain. Those original colonies were of Great Britain. They just severed ties with them and created their own thing. That's the mother. Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. So what is the hindermost of the nations? That means what nation is on the other side of the world? America, Babylon the Great. Because all those nations at that time were known. They were known lands. It was this one. This is the hindermost. Verse 13, because of the wrath of Yahweh, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues, because this place is never going to be inhabited. It's going to be a desert for the desert creatures and the dragons. That's the heritage of Esau, Edom, Obadiah 1. That's the heritage of Babylon the Great, Revelation 18. Jeremiah 49 and Jeremiah 50? I think 51. We're in Jeremiah 50 right now. They parallel with the destruction or what is prophesied against Babylon the Great and Esau, Edom. They're one and the same. They're symbolic. Verse 13 again. Because of the wrath of Yahweh, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues. Verse 14. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all around Babylon. That's why you got these hypersonic missiles that China has developed that can go all around the globe and back. It can come across the Arctic. It can go across the Antarctica and I can't even think of the other continent. Antarctica and what's the one at the top? You got the Arctic and You know what I'm talking about. It's not coming to mind right now. It can come through the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow. So that's saying all you nations that have the capability of shooting nuclear missiles over here, or intercontinental ballistic missiles over here, shoot them. It says all ye that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against Yahweh. So that's what's in store for Babylon the Great, America Babylon the Great. Now I was gonna close it out there, but let me see if there's anything else I wanted to get in here. That was really it. I mentioned Jeremiah 49 and 51. Since I mentioned it, I might as well get it. Let me see. Salakia. It was a point I wanted to make. I can't remember exactly where the verse is at though. If I don't find it real quick, I'm just going to leave it at that. Salakia, give me a moment. I mean, I can go through all these, but I don't want to make this lesson long. I could just do a whole lesson on this. It might be in 50. Let me see, is it in 50? Salakia. Yeah, I can't find it immediately. I know the verse I was talking about is Jeremiah 49, and then you have pretty much the link up with that is in, I think it's in Jeremiah 51. So this is Jeremiah 49 verse 20. It says, therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. So bear me one moment. Let me get Jeremiah. It got to be 51. Because you really get the fullness of it when I read them together or read them back to back. Slovakia. Just give me a moment. And it gotta be 50. I don't know how I missed it in 50. Salakia. Okay, I'm tripping. It's right here the whole time. So this is Jeremiah 50 and 45. So first, let's go back to Jeremiah 49 and 20. So this is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 20. And it reads, therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. It's going to say the same thing in Jeremiah 50 and 45 concerning Babylon. Therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Babylon and his purposes. He hath purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. So that's the heritage of Babylon the Great and Esau Edom. So when it's saying Babylon, that's Esau Edom as a whole. When it's saying Edom in Jeremiah 49, that's Esau Edom as a whole. When it's saying Teman, those are like the wise men. Through the Spirit, the apostles say those are the Germans because they're the smartest ones, and that is true. When you start doing a lot of history on like development of nuclear technology and different philosophies and different inventions, a lot of these things go back to the Germans. So, and when it's speaking about Babylon and the Chaldeans were Babylonians, but these were like the wise men of the Babylonians. These were like the sorcerers. That's why it's so parabolic. So let's read this again. Read both of them again. I'm actually going to close out on this. So this is Jeremiah 50 and 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Babylon and his purposes that he hath purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. And that least of the flock is talking about the small hats, the 1948ers, because these are the beginnings, these are the brewings of World War III. But ultimately, it's going to be Israel that draws America into the real World War III. When the shit really hit the fan, when it's mutually assured destruction. That's the least of the flock. That's pretty much the smallest tribe of the Edomites, but they at the very top because they're the ones behind these world events, Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them, because they're going to do something that's going to cause World War III to break out. And again, World War III is going to be fought in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, So this is Jeremiah 49 and 20. Therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. So what is that showing you? Esau, Edom, and Babylon the Great are synonymous with each other. That's what that's showing you. But anyway, I really just wanted to bring up the fact that Putin is making these European countries purchase their natural resources in the ruble, which is going to further hurt their economy and their ability to move. And they're pretty much going to be relying on America to do something. And those same countries are the ones that eat the bread. But things are going to get real interesting. But anyway, I hope the lesson was edifying. I'm going to give praises to Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shai by Hashem Rakakwadash for putting the spirit on me to do the lesson. And until next time, Shalom.